Well, it's good to see you, sir. One thing I've got to just say is it's just such an honor to meet you this way. I feel like we're dating for the first time and we're doing this just remotely and safely.
Well, then it'll be a good date because it's kind of safe.
It is kind of safe.
It's not very nice to talk with you. I hope to see you in person someday with Stan and Chance, and we'll all have dinner and celebrate the ending of this virus.
Well, one of the things I have to say is that if there's anything that you've always done in your entire career, I actually think that TV was invented for you. And as a result, here we are trusting your leadership, thought leadership, and even your opinion on the matter of what comes next. Does that make sense?
It does, but this is about you now, this next few minutes.
Absolutely.
What is this sports thing you're doing? What is it called? What's it called?
So here's where we'll start. So my name is Richard Dolan. I'm a special advisor to QuestCap. As you already know, our dear friend Stan had a dream, and that was to come up with an investment objective-based company that was socially responsible. Making money was one thing, but doing so with meaning was another. And so as a result, he thought, what are the top three things in the world that needs bandwidth, resources, and money? And he knows that technology is one. The climate concerns of the world is another. And as soon as he said medical, COVID-19 hit the scene. And so as soon as that happened, Mr. King, that's when he said, let's mobilize MedQuest. Let's go out there in the world and find out, let's curate and aggregate everything we need to really restore the betterment of mankind. So that's what our dear friend Stan did and his entire team. And that's the team I belong to.
It's a large order.
It is a large order. You're absolutely right. So with that, let me ask you something.
Call me Larry, not Mr. King.
Okay. Well, thank you, Larry. It's an honor. You have no idea. It took me a long time just to get ready for this moment. So thank you. But with all kidding aside, first tell me, what intrigued you most that when Stan picked up the phone and asked for you to join his advisory committee, aside from your charm, good looks, and incredible history of doing the most epic and most legendary things, what intrigued you most about what Stan had to say?
Well, Stan is a futurist, and I love futurists. Stan looks to tomorrow, not yesterday, and this morning's gone already. And of course, he's a great personal friend and a great guy, super guy to be around. He's always thinking imaginatively. He's always trying, what's new? Why'd you do this? Let's do that. Let's do this. In fact, what I would describe about Stan that amazes me is I don't know how he keeps up with himself. Because he could have an idea at 11, and then 11:08, and then 11:12, it's passé. But he's got a new idea at 11:16. Stan is kind of a revolutionary.
Absolutely.
I count him great. I count my good fortune to be his friend.
Well,
this is about you.
No, absolutely. And listen, the feeling is mutual. If Stan were here, he'd want to make sure that you heard loud and clear that he loves you, he respects, and he's grateful for your role and your place in all this. So let's stick to the course of action here. So that being said, I mean, these are no ordinary times. I mean, I don't need to remind you of the crisis at hand, the levels of uncertainty that is engulfing this world. Let me ask you something, Larry. When you think about this particular time in the history of mankind, and you've seen so much in your tenure on the screen, reviewing, reflecting, and interviewing many movers and shakers and thought leaders on topics of crisis and response, what's your thoughts on this one right now, this COVID-19, this coronavirus?
One, there's never been anything like it. There have been other epidemics, and I wasn't alive when that epidemic that took almost the entire world 100 years ago. But no one's ever lived through anything like this. Everybody being inside, people dying right next door to you. It's as horrific. I could not have imagined this. You couldn't have imagined this.
No.
And the United States was, to its discredit, behind. It had a pandemic group, all organized. In fact, the story of front page newspapers today. This group was to study pandemics. They disbanded it last November as no need. Unbelievable. So I don't give great credit to Trump or the administration. It's a personal opinion. We could have done a lot more. Now, what to do now? Well, the first thing is obviously how to lick this. How do we solve it? And I know that people are working night and day to try to solve it. But I guess what you want to do is do something in the interim. What is your goal?
Well, I love that the interviewer is now going to be interviewed by the interviewee. I love how you turn the tables on me, Larry. But I'll say it this way: what I know and what I've come to learn and appreciate. I mean, and this matters to whether you're 8 years old or 88 years of age. I mean, everyone's got their eyes glued on who's going to define the next step. So the first was reaction, right? I mean, something happened. People had temperatures. They rolled themselves into hospitals and said, "I don't feel so good." So we reacted. We self-quarantined, we tested, we measured, and then that was the reaction, the knee-jerk reaction. The second, though, phase of managing a pandemic, what I've come to learn, is the response. Here's what we're going to do. Here's how much we need. This is the bandwidth we require. Here's what people need to do. Stay home, shut businesses down, stop flying, close borders. Here's the problem. Without that end in sight, people are left disheveled. I mean, people don't know when they can get back to commerce, get back to community, get back to school, just get back to their lives. And so as you look out into the next phase, which is restoration, that's where our good friend Stan and all those at QuestCap are really focusing on, well, what do we do to get back to a business as unusual as it might be, but at least as business as usual as can be? So number one, Larry, it's going to have to take down testing. We got to test everybody. We got to find out who's negative, who's positive, and who's immune. Once we know that, we'll know exactly what bandwidth we require, what resources are needed so that we can, in fact, self-quarantine, self-assess, self-regulate.
So you're saying we're working in the dark a little.
You're right. The difference, though, is that before this happened, before testing began to become the new narrative, we were really working blindfolded and in the dark. Now we're not blindfolded, we're just in the dark. And so what folks like Stan and other futurists are doing is saying, look, we've got to be ruthless in being responsible ourselves. It's kind of like what private enterprise did every time there was a crisis in the country, where it was private enterprise that they beat government to the punch. And I know you've experienced that. So that's what's happening. That's what we're working on right now.
And what's the connection with sports?
Well, I'm glad you brought it up because that's kind of how we're going to end off the conversation. It's why I reached out to you, and I'm really grateful to you and the family for letting us have a little bit of time with you. But what we've found is this. Right now, what we know is that sport, whether you play basketball or baseball, whether you hit tennis balls or golf balls, every major league sport, every professional league wants to get back to game. I mean, you've got players that got to get paid. You've got staff that needs to earn a living. You've got stadiums that can't remain in the dark forever. You've got fans that are yearning for sport and broadcasters are yearning for content. So it's an entire industry that really does, in fact, matter. But what they're missing is a standard. If we test people, what does that mean? If we have results, where does that go? And in fact, if we know that we're controlling the state and affairs of sport within our own bubble, how do we manage the movement of it? So what QuestCap's done is that they've curated the standard to safer sport. They've mobilized immunologists, Larry, very smart people, researchers, doctors, and we've begun to mobilize members of professional sport leagues to start taking the tests and providing us an insight on what do you need to create a self-governing standard so that we can restore the spirit of game. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but how far away are we? When people have to be 6 feet apart, therefore you can't put them in stadiums.
That's right.
So in the area of sport, I think until you get everybody tested, and we're lacking in testing. Testing is our biggest lack in the world. We're among the world's worst.
You're spot on.
So if you want sports back, the first thing you got to have everybody is tested. So if you could tell me I could put 50,000 people in Dodger Stadium today because I know they've all been tested and one's not going to catch from the other.
Absolutely.
I could do it, but until you test, sport won't return. And hey, no one's bigger about sports than me. No one misses it more. I love competition. I love watching people compete. I was never a good athlete myself, but my children were. I hope all this works for you. It sounds like you're at the beginning, right?
You're right. You're right. Absolutely. But it only takes a match to light a forest fire. And what we know is this: there's 4 levels of the bubble that we have to contain. The athletes are number one. Their family, their friends, because that's the most immediately important. Then level 2 is like the coaches, the trainers, the staff. Level 3 are all those that work in the stadium that makes the game playable. We're not even talking about fans yet, Larry. Then we're talking about the broadcasters, the media, the journalists, because without them involved, we can't broadcast sport. So we're talking about sort of like a life back to game in an era living with COVID, not sort of like post COVID, because we know that it's not going to be just be evaporating overnight. This is a new normal. And I see that we got Stan here. I'm not sure if he's able to come in and say hello. Stan, are you saying hello, or are you just kind of listening in and watching us? You just give me a thumbs up.
Maybe hang on.
I think he's just watching.
I see Stan. Hey, Stanny, baby.
I don't know if he can hear you.
I don't know how to look good with his glasses. Okay. Anyway, it's been great talking to you. Listen, I hope to meet you in person, and we could do a whole session together on my show.
Absolutely, I would love that. But I'm going to ask you one last question, only because I now got rid of Stan. It's just last 2 minutes. If you were to make a statement about how important it is to really think ahead and think of a more digital future, because that's where social distancing will remain. I mean, we've got ourselves a situation here where it won't be business as usual. It'll be business unusual. Larry, do you agree that the world will be different and it'll be far more digital than ever before?
Yep, it'll never be the same. You can't go back. You never could go back anyway, especially now. You can't go back. It's a new world. It's a new age. It's a new, everything old is new again. We have to start all over. And you're in at the beginning here, Mr. Dolan. I wish you the best.
Well, I appreciate you very much, Larry. And I'm grateful for your time. I'm grateful for the space that you've given me to do this conversation. And a real big thanks to Chance for making it all happen. So God bless you. God bless the family. And be safe and be well. I'll look forward to meeting you very soon.
Chance King is going to be running all of this someday.
You got it, my friend. Be well. Okay.